It takes just a moment to get that going. Okay, there we go. We've got Nancy, North Carolina.
Oh, good.
Okay, welcome everybody. I'm Bruce Wiggins. I am the forum host this morning because Jennifer has nominated, Reverend Jennifer has nominated Starr King School for the Ministry as our Share the Plate recipient for this month, which she mentioned during our service this morning. And so I'm standing in to help with technology and introduce our speaker. And before we turn to our presentation, Lorraine has a few words to get us started. Lorraine?
Hello, everybody. Good morning. It's good to see you all. I have been experimenting with a little explanation about what forum is at First Church. So I'll read what I have right now. Takes just a minute. Sunday forums have been part of Sunday mornings for over 50 years at First Unitarian Society, Milwaukee. All scheduling and hosting is accomplished by volunteers. The forums support our mission. We gather together to nurture the spirit, engage the mind, inspire action. They are currently offered via Zoom at 11:10 a.m. and the format includes 45-minute presentation, followed by time for questions and discussion. This lecture series showcases provocative and sometimes controversial speakers, discussing topical issues of the day, including the arts, politics, environment, health, and education. Forum presentations are the responsibility of the presenters, who are invited to share their experience and knowledge of the topic. Presenters do not receive honoraria. The content of forums will not necessarily express the viewpoint of all members of First Unitarian Society in Milwaukee, but are meant to offer thoughtful topics which our members often then pursue on their own. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lorraine. Jennifer, do you have a word or two you want to say before we proceed with Jessica?
Yes, thank you, Bruce. I'd like to start with thanking Bruce actually for taking on the work of hosting this forum. I was preaching this morning, which made it a little bit difficult to do double duty. So I'm really grateful for Bruce's generosity. And thank you to Lorraine for your work leading the forum, and of course to Jessica. It's so wonderful to have you here with us representing Starr King. As many of our members know, I'm actually a graduate of Starr King School for the Ministry, which is why I nominated them as one of our Share the Plate recipients. Full disclosure, I am a monthly giver to Starr King for School for the Ministry. So maybe somebody else on this call will choose to join me in that monthly giving to support and sustain one of our UU identity seminaries. But I do that because I'm deeply committed to Starr King's mission to form and shape our Unitarian Universalist ministers and progressive religious leaders. They do a great job, I think. And it's not just because they formed and shaped me, it's because I watched the way that Starr King was so intentional and deliberate about both creating the possibility for people to learn and grow at the pace that they set for themselves, and challenging them on issues of oppression. There was a course, at least in my time, called Anti-Oppression Theologies, and asking us as Unitarian Universalist ministers to consider how our ministry is going to affect the world. How do we want to create transformation, not just in individual lives, but in the community and in society at large? I think they do an amazing job of that, of helping shape our Unitarian Universalist identity, and they create really the next generation of ministers, and those are the folks who lead our congregations into the future. So I am so grateful for Starr King School for the Ministry and Meadville Lombard and Harvard Divinity, and I'm sure Jessica is going to talk more about our Unitarian Universalist identity schools and where they come from and what they do. But I am a huge fan, and I'm so grateful that our congregation is having Starr King as our Share the Plate recipient this month. And thanks to Jessica for joining us.
Okay, well, I guess it's my turn. My name is Jessica Cloud, and I am so happy to be with you here this morning. I hear it is pretty cold there in Milwaukee, and I'm not jealous at all. I am a lifelong Southerner and ill prepared for that kind of weather. So while I wish I could be there with you in person today, I'll take it as a tiny blessing. I'm going to jump into a quick little presentation. I titled this presentation "To Bless the World in the Spirit of Love," and I think this will be really familiar phrases for Jennifer, because this is a phrase that comes from the Starr King chalice lighting, which in its turn comes from the words of our President Emerita, the Reverend Dr. Rebecca Parker. And I just want to start off with our Starr King chalice lighting this morning. So you can say the words along with me behind your mute button. We actually have our little Starr King matches here today. With the kindling of this flame, we reaffirm our commitment to accept life's gifts with grace and gratitude, and to use them to bless the world in the spirit of love. We start all of our ritual events and gatherings at Starr King with those words, so I thought it was appropriate to do that today as we gather together here to talk about the school and its mission. So I just want to start by talking about who I am, because I think that that's important. We've got an echo. Does somebody need to mute their... And to use them to bless the world in the spirit of love. We start all of our ritual events and gatherings at Starr King with those words, so I thought it was appropriate to do that today as we gather together here to talk about the school and its mission. So I just want to... Okay, I think we've got it. Okay, sorry about that. I wanted to make sure everybody could hear. This is my family and I in front of our home in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. My name is Jessica Nino Cloud, and I am proud to serve as the Vice President for Advancement of Starr King for the last 5.5 years. I came in during the end of the first year of Reverend Rosemary Bray McNatt's presidency at Starr King, and I probably had one of the strangest introductions to Unitarian Universalism. I joined my local church, which is our home Unitarian Universalist Church in Ellisville, Mississippi. We're actually a UU free-thinking church that's been in rural Mississippi since 1906, and one of 4 remaining congregations in the state of Mississippi. So we are happy to be a haven for free thinkers of all kinds here in Mississippi. I joined our little church, and a month later on a whim applied for a job at Starr King School for the Ministry, even though I really didn't want to move to California. It just sounded like a great opportunity. And they actually offered me the remote opportunity. So it was the best of both worlds. I didn't have to tell my mother I was moving her grandchildren 2,000 miles away, but I got to have an amazing job. And I learned a lot about Unitarian Universalism. If you can imagine, going from walking into your church for the first time and finally, you know, saying, yes, I am a UU instead of just visiting. And less than 6 months later, I was having lunch with John Behrens, one of the former presidents of the UUA. So it was a very strange crash course in Unitarian Universalism, but I'm so, so grateful for it. I have 2 children, as you can see. Emmeline is 11 and Thomas is 6, and my husband, Daniel. And right now we are homeschooling, but we've homeschooled on and off since my children started their education. And of course, I work from home. So I guess you could say I had a little head start on pandemic lifestyle. A major difference is we don't get out and travel or, you know, go to live events and whatnot anymore. My background is actually as a higher education fundraiser. So I've worked for a variety of four-year institutions across the country, South Carolina, Mississippi. I hold a certified fundraising executive or CFRE designation. I've had that since 2013, which means that I'm held to the highest possible ethical and practical standards for the practice of fundraising. I have 20 plus years of experience in fundraising. And you'll often see me, probably for most folks that I'll meet here today, you'll probably catch me at General Assembly, and I'll be running from one event to another, trying to make sure that all of the catering is handled so that everybody can have a wonderful time and learn more about Starr King's mission. So basically, I'm not a minister. I'm a fundraiser by trade. I have a liberal arts education, a master's in English Lit, but I like to say I play a minister on TV or on Zoom. I actually run the services every week because of my technical experience with Zoom for my local church. So I definitely understand and sympathize with what we're all going through trying to convert to virtual worship these days. So I feel and I also get to spend time with so many amazing ministers who are training for chaplaincy and training for parish ministry and community ministry as students at Starr King. And I get to work with our wonderful grads like Jennifer and others. Okay. So where do ministers come from? This is a question that Rosemary and I started to ask in these presentations as we went around to different congregations, and we realized a lot of folks just don't know. Like a wonderful, multi-talented, magical minister appears at every congregation. That's a perfect match. And they just move forward and change the lives of all of those congregants, right? Well, actually, it's a fairly rigorous process, and it's actually more rigorous, I think, for Unitarian Universalist ministers than some other denominations. So, first of all UU ministers are required to have an MDiv degree. That's a Master's of Divinity. Now, they can get that degree from any theological school, and there are hundreds, and they span the whole spectrum of theological and philosophical perspectives, all the way from evangelicalism to Unitarian Universalism and any number of other traditions. So you can attend a school that's not Unitarian Universalist, and then you go through the process of what we call fellowshipping with the Unitarian Universalist Association, which shows that you have a grasp on specific Unitarian Universalist perspectives on things, and that you adhere to the various standards that the UUA has. Now, ordination, because we're in a tradition that values the individual polity of all of our congregations, individual congregations choose to ordain ministers. And while we hope that ordination and fellowship line up, and they most often do, congregations are free to ordain folks who are not in formal fellowship with UUA, which I found really interesting when I learned that. Probably doesn't happen very often. But yeah, then you have search process. And this is where most people who are in the pews every Sunday interact with the process of theological education as you're actually choosing your minister. So if your minister retires or, moves on to another path in their career and you're searching for your new minister in that role, that's where you may encounter, okay, this person went to Drew Theological Seminary or Andover Newton or Harvard or Starr King or Meadville Lombard.
But parish ministry is not the only path that folks who attend theological schools can take. As I mentioned, we have folks who are studying for military chaplaincy, hospital and hospice chaplaincy, even environmental chaplaincy and disaster chaplaincy are becoming big areas where folks can serve. Even within the parish, you can have an emphasis on religious education or faith development. You can have your ministry mostly center around music. There are so many other paths that folks can take, not to mention the paths of community ministry, activism, and nonprofit work that so many of Starr King's graduates do. So Starr King School for the Ministry, obviously we are one of 2 remaining UU identity schools. Harvard is always kind of like a sort of, they have a historical connection to Unitarian Universalism, but not a formal affiliation with our association. So Starr King and Meadville, I'm going to talk about both of them. I've got a couple slides with details. But I want to talk about what sets Starr King apart and makes us particularly unique as one of our identity schools. We actually offer 3 degrees right now. 2 of them are our primary offerings. So our MDiv, that's where most of our students are studying in a Master's of Divinity program. And then the MASC, or Master of Arts and Social Change. This program, we're so thrilled, is 15 years old as of 2020. So we're going into our 16th year of this program. And it's a 2-year program. And we want folks to get a grounding in what it takes to make social change with a spiritual grounding. So it's a really unique degree. And when it was started, it was absolutely, there was nothing like it in the country. There have been a number of different programs like it that have popped up since then. But that's a 2-year degree. The MDiv typically takes 3 years full time. And some students even opt to take a combined degree where they get an MDiv and the Master of Arts and Social Change. That program takes about 4 years full time. And very exciting. Recently, we sold our building that we've been in since the 1940s, which was on an area called Holy Hill in Berkeley, California. And we have decided to co-locate in Oakland, California on the campus of Mills College. So Mills is historically a women's college. And now they have grad programs that are co-ed, and they also welcome folks that are trans or gender non-binary. And we have a lot of interesting historical overlaps with Mills College, and we're very excited to see what kind of partnerships will open up. A lot of our stuff is at Mills College in our new building called the Vera Long Building. And I'm going to show you a website later where you can actually go watch a video tour of our new space. But we're not fully in there, of course, right now because of the pandemic. So the campus is very restricted to protect the international students who are on the campus right now that can't leave, and some researchers that need access to their laboratories despite the pandemic. But we're very excited about this new move, and we're really interested into what kind of partnerships we can open up, potentially between their social work program and our Master of Arts and Social Change, or partnerships in entrepreneurial ministry with their business school or their education program. So there's a lot of possibilities there. The other thing that makes us unique is that we are the only UU identity school that offers a high residency option. So what that means, high residency means folks actually move to the Bay Area and they take all or most of their classes physically there in Oakland at what will be our new building. Now, high residency, that becomes more and more difficult with the cost of living in the Bay Area. And of course, that is an expensive way to do this. You have to uproot your life to come to school. But we recognize that some folks need that for their ministerial formation and different learning styles, that this is the best way for some folks. Low residency allows you to do the opposite. So you stay in your community, you stay with your local congregation and your family and all of that. And then you come during our intensive periods, which we have several weeks of intensive classes. So one class for 40 hours a week in August and in January. And those are your in-person classes. And between times, you're taking courses online. And again, right now with the pandemic, this is totally different. Everybody is kind of by default low residency right now. In fact, completely virtual. So we've had to convert all of our events, orientation, graduation. So everything is kind of low residency right now. But Starr King was really well prepared for what happened in March. We were able to go to only online classes early because we started doing online classes way before it was cool. In, I think, 2001, Starr King offered our first online only class. So, and of course we have remote staff at Starr King, some remote staff like me. So we're very used to using Zoom to not only facilitate education, but also running the school and meetings and whatnot. Another way that we are really unique is we have a dual religious affinity or commitments at Starr King. So we are Unitarian Universalists. We began as, our original name was the Pacific Unitarian School for ministry. And we later changed it to honor Thomas Starr King, who's a really interesting figure in California Unitarian history. But we also have a multi-religious identity. So what that means is that you may have half to 2/3 of your students in a given class that are UU or UU identified. And then you may have Buddhist, Sufi, Jewish priestesses, Russian Orthodox, earth-based indigenous traditions, and practitioners of all of those in the class learning alongside future UU ministers. And not only that, we expose all of our students to a multi-religious intensive. So our UU students may have multiple commitments beyond Unitarian Universalism. So they may be UU and Sufi identified, or UU Christians, or however that manifests for each individual person. So it's a really vibrant and dynamic environment. And we actually offer, we have chapel once a month right now, online, and everybody is welcome to attend. So I'll try to remember to send the information for our next chapel to Jennifer so she can circulate it. But we welcome folks to attend our chapel services. They tend to be, again, just very invigorating and fresh and new. And our students bring a lot of different traditions to bear on our chapel services. And our director of spiritual care, Pastor Jacqueline Duhart, is running those and coordinating the students. And I think that they're going to be really fantastic this spring. We also have at Starr King a deep commitment to what we call ECO, or ECO, Educating to Counter Oppressions. So Jennifer mentioned a course called Anti-Oppression Theology. Well, we have very, very few required courses at Starr King. I mentioned one, the multi-religious intensive. The other is our Educating to Counter Oppressions class. And it's actually become kind of a prerequisite for all of our other classes for folks in degree programs. And Educating to Counter Oppressions teaches folks about the various systemic structures that we have in society and how we're not all starting in the same place, and what can we do to bring us closer to that beloved community. I know that's your theme for the month, and that's really what Educating to Counter Oppressions is about. And the interesting thing about Starr King is that it's not just a class that we teach, it's actually something that informs how the school operates. So we talk about ECO in terms of the finances of the school. In fact, our entire endowment is invested in what we called ESG funds, or environmental, social, and good governance funds. So we actually walk the talk when it comes to how we even manage our money at Starr King. It really infuses everything that we do and is a value statement for the school. And I got a slide later that has a link to our Educating to Counter Oppression statement, and it has some really beautiful language if you're interested in learning more about this. And it is truly something that is fundamental to the school at this point. And we started talking about Educating to Counter Oppressions at Starr King in the early 90s. So this is really, this has become a hot topic in recent years as we've all kind of fought back against the Trump administration and all of the different cultural things that came along with that. But really that commitment goes decades back for Starr King. And I always find folks are interested in this. We offer 2 certificate programs. So if you're not ready to invest in a 2-year degree or a 3-year degree, you don't have to be, well, you don't even have to be enrolled in a certificate program. You can take a course at Starr King as a special student. Before we let everybody in, we were talking about our UU Polity class, which is an intensive that's taught during General Assembly. And I believe we're going to be offering it again, even though GA is virtual this year, where you learn about the governance of Unitarian Universalism and the history of how things do come about. How do things actually work in religious organizations? Our Dr. Meg Richardson teaches that course, and she's fantastic. And everyone who's taken her polity class has absolutely loved it. But you can also do a certificate program. So say you take a course and you really like it and you want to take a few more. Well, if you add those up, you're probably getting pretty close to a certificate program in Unitarian Universalist Studies. If you're more interested in learning about other traditions other than Unitarian Universalism, we have a certificate program in multi-religious studies. So those are the 2 that we offer right now. We have offered different ones at different times, and we're hoping to add more. But if you're interested in studying as a special student or interested in the certificate programs, I'm going to have a link at the end so that you can research that more. And one of the things that I really love about Starr King, and this goes back all the way to the founding of the school, is an emphasis on personalized educational models. So that means that, as I said, there are very few required courses. There's no prescriptive program of here's what you take your first year, your second year, your third year. Instead, we have a very intense advising model so that our advisors work very closely with each student about their path and their vision of their future ministry. And they put together a program that matches up with what they want to do. So one of my favorite stories is Barbara Myers, who's one of our grads, Reverend Barbara Myers, was really interested in mental health. And so she particularly picked courses that would allow her to build a community ministry program around mental health outreach for folks that were not coming from a Christian perspective. So she has a multi-religious and kind of UU free-thinking mental health outreach ministry. And she put that program together at Starr King. So students have to show proficiency in what we call different thresholds of ministry. But other than that, it's kind of a build your own program. And I think that that's really cool. And I think it paves the way for innovative ministries at Starr King. And I've seen that happen as I've watched students graduate and move out into their ministries. You get to see the lovely faces of 2 people that I absolutely adore, and that's Reverend Rosemary Bray McNatt, my boss, the president of Starr King School for the Ministry, and Dr. Elias Ortega, who is the new president of Meadville Lombard Theological School. And it's really a new day of cooperation between the 2 schools. So I think there was a little bit like Meadville is like Mars and Starr King is like Venus energy before, but Elias and Rosemary are very good friends and are committed to having the schools united as the remaining 2 UU identity schools. So you can see they've come up with this concept called Keepers of the Flame. And you can see how they say that our schools are repositories of our UU heritage and serve as incubators for the future of our faith movement. And I just think that that's wonderful. What's really interesting to me about Rosemary and Elias is they're presidents of our UU identity schools, but neither one of them attended a UU identity school. And the reason for that, and they're very clear about it, is that there was more funding for a UU minister to go to a Methodist school. And I think in Elias's case, it was a Presbyterian school. I might be wrong on that, but there's more funding. So that kind of flips the question back of how can we support our own within Unitarian Universalism, providing scholarships at Meadville, at Starr King, and through the UUA, so that we can have folks that come through these identity schools as well without as much of a burden of student loan debt. Starr King was really blessed a few years ago in 2016 to receive a $2 million gift from one of our late board members. And that founded the David and Norma Lewis Scholarship Program. And that $2 million provides full tuition scholarships for 4 to 5 students per year. And that's an amazing program, which helps us recruit students and compete with places like Harvard or Drew Seminary or all of those places that have more resources to attract students without them having to get into debt. We need more. Obviously, we have 95 to 105 students at any one time at Starr King. And we're able to provide those 4-year scholarships, the full tuition for 4 to 5. So obviously we would love to have more funds for that, but that's kind of why we're focusing on the movement and UU Identity Schools as being supportive of that movement. So an identity school is one that has a formal affiliation with the Unitarian Universalist Association. And I love this quote: the Association of Theological Schools is the accrediting body for theological schools. And Meadville and Starr King are accredited through ATS, as we call it. And this was from the president of ATS back in 2008. A movement like the Unitarian Universalist Association, it seems to me, needs both a range of educational partners, because you only have 2 seminaries and we can't educate everyone that is needed as a minister, and a few schools that serve the movement in more intimate ways as identity partners. Theological schools that provide identity, that uniquely embody an extended historical argument. They need attention and funding that differs from schools whose primary connection to the movement is to provide an educational service. So for instance, Starr King has a large collection of very rare books that are mostly in the heritage of Unitarian Universalism. Those books are currently in some very fancy climate controlled storage since we've moved out of our old building, and we are working towards finding a place potentially on the Mills College campus to store our rare books. But Meadville also has a number of things in their archives that are specific to our movement. Not only that, we house and shelter the scholars of Unitarian Universalist theologies and Unitarian Universalist history, and we pass that along to our students in our classes. So if folks get a degree from another institution that's not a UU identity school, very often they'll come to Starr King for specific classes to shore up the information that they need for the fellowship process with the UUA. So they may come over and take UU history, or they may come over and just take UU theology to try to supplement what they're getting at their main institution and be more prepared for the fellowship process. And here's another quote from one of my favorite people, Larry Ladd. He's the former financial advisor to the UUA, and also has a professional training and long experience in higher education finances and funding. So he said in 2014, the Consolidated Association, the UUA, began with 5 theological schools. 4 of whom, excluding Harvard, because Harvard is, again, historically connected, but not officially, were exclusively identified with the denomination. There were Tufts and St. Lawrence on the Universalist side, and Starr King and Meadville on the Unitarian side. And in the 1960s, there was a flurry of activity regarding what the denomination should do about their schools, and no plan of action emerged. And the 2 Universalist schools died, not from a policy decision, but rather from inaction. So Tufts and St. Lawrence is now a fund, an endowment managed by the UUA, and they provide scholarships to students, and they also provide awards so that students can get funding to do their clinical pastoral education. And Tufts disappeared as well. So it's just Starr King and Meadville and kind of Harvard right now. But we could have had more. We could have had more schools. And so what Starr King and Meadville are really trying to do now is help educate folks about what we uniquely bring to the movement, and in the hopes that we always have at least two. And I can tell you from going to conferences with other fundraisers from the Association of Theological Schools, the evangelicals understand this and deeply support their theological schools in a way that I really haven't seen, with a kind of a passion that I haven't really seen from Unitarian Universalists. So I think perhaps that's something that we can work toward is funding Starr King and Meadville more, and not just the schools themselves, but also the students, so that we can support our movement for the long haul. The 60s is not that long ago, and we've lost half of our identity schools. So here's just a little bit about Meadville. I don't work for Meadville, but I worked with them on a letter, and these were some of the what we call points of pride that Meadville put forward. And I will circulate this as a PDF and send it to Bruce so it can be sent out to the attendees today. And, you know, Meadville is exclusively a low residency school now. So they do intensives at their site in Chicago, and then students go back into their communities and study online in between. And again, Meadville has a variety of ways that they train UU ministers, again, parish and community, hospital and military chaplains, religious educators, entrepreneurs, nonprofits, etc. And Meadville is also the home of the FAWS Collaborative, which is a religious education and faith development organization. And they produce, you may have participated in Beloved Conversations. I know a lot of folks have been through that program at many different congregations, and that comes out of Meadville. And Starr King, I talked about most of these things at the beginning, but you know, just again, you know, our mass program is pretty unique. Our multi-religious affiliation, our option for high residency, so to actually live and learn in the Bay Area and be there physically with our faculty and study, but also with the low residency option. You don't have to move to the Bay Area to get a Starr King degree. And the math program and our certificate programs are pretty unique too. Okay, I just put these links on here, and again, I'll circulate this as a PDF. You know, there's some good resources on the UUA's website about if you're interested in becoming a minister. If you've got that little call in the back of your head that you want to study, you want to learn more, you want to serve in a different way, then there's some good resources out there from the UUA about what you have to do. What are the steps to getting there? And then I've put some links to why would you want to study at Starr King School for the Ministry versus other places that you could study Unitarian Universalism. And then the next link is to our eco statement, which again, I think it has some beautiful language about really being the change that we want to see in the world. You know, we were talking about countering white supremacy in the early 90s. So that's before, you know, those conversations were really happening at a high level in our culture. Then if you're interested in Starr King and you're like, yeah, I want to learn a little bit more, I'm jazzed up about this now, you can actually go to this website, admissions/open house for Starr King, and you can not only sign up for our next open house, which will be the 17th of February. It's going to be at 5:30 Central, and this is going to be dedicated to talking about queering theology. So how Starr King uniquely supports LGBTQIA+ individuals in their pursuit of a ministerial degree. And we've set it up where you can actually go on there and you can get on-demand access to previous open houses. So we have a few of our previous open houses. So if you want a really low pressure way to learn more about Starr King and hear other folks' questions, you can just put your email in on there and you can watch our previous open houses. And there's information about our degree programs and certificates. And I think there's a link on that page also to become a special student and just take like a one-time class if you're interested in that. And then I've included the giving pages for Starr King and Meadville, and that outlines some of the different ways that you can support Starr King and Meadville. You can make a one-time gift. You can contact me to talk about any kind of legacy giving or plan giving or estate giving. You can also sign up to become a monthly donor, as Jennifer talked about at the beginning. And we love folks who make those small monthly gifts because that's like regular, dependable income that the school can count on. And it's so important to have those small monthly gifts because they add up. And it's just such a wonderful way to show how much you're behind Starr King in our theological schools. And if you have any questions that we don't get time to answer on here, please contact me. Or if you have personal questions that you don't want to ask in the group, please feel free to call me. I am never very far from my phone because I am a remote employee. So you can call my cell phone or send me an email and I will get it just about any time and let me know, hey, I heard you on Zoom talking to our Milwaukee forum and I want to know more about this. And even if I don't know, I am blessed in my job to usually know who to contact to get the answer. So I'm happy to connect you with whatever person may be able to help you. So I'm going to stop the share and maybe we can just take some questions. I've not been able to watch the chat while I was talking.
That's okay. I've been looking. There are two questions there. Hi, Jessica. And they're both from Dennis at this point. The first question is, can the Starr King students still take classes from the many other seminaries on Holy Hill? And how many students are in Starr King programs at this time?
Yes. Okay. So we have about 105 students that are exclusively Starr King students. Now, they're admitted through Starr King. I'll say that. We are still a member of the Graduate Theological Union, which is what most folks are talking about when they're talking about Holy Hill. That's where there were a bunch of seminaries physically located together, but there were always a few that were further afield there in the Bay Area. We have put forward our intention to exit the GTU. That will not happen for 2 more years. So you have to kind of give a long notice period in order to leave the GTU. Just to give you some perspective, it's no secret. It actually cost us more to belong to the GTU. It outweighs our denominational support. So the support that we get directly from the UUA to operate as the UU Identity Seminary, we essentially give all of that and more to be part of the GTU. So it costs a lot to remain a member of the GTU. So we're exploring ways in which we can replicate what we call cross-registration. So yes, our students can still, for the next 2 years, cross-register with the other GTU schools and UC Berkeley and Mills College. And then as we ease away from the GTU formally, we're going to set up independent cross-registration relationships with some of the other institutions that our students most commonly cross-register with. So we get a lot of students from the Pacific School of Religion. A lot of UU students go there, and then they come over to take UU specific courses at Starr King, and vice versa sometimes. So we're working to kind of replicate those relationships. We also are having early discussions about partnering with Meadville in terms of getting online library access that all of our students can use, which would be a lot more cost effective than what we are paying for GTU library access at the moment. So we've set forward, this is all part of our our plan, what we call New Beginnings. So you can go to sksm.edu/New Beginnings. On that page, you can read basically the entire history. We've been very transparent of how we're trying to move towards financial sustainability long term. And the move, selling the building and the move to Mills was part of that, as well as our intention to exit the GTU in the next couple of years and develop different kinds of cross-registration relationships. I hope that answers the question.
I do have a question, and maybe some other people will think of things too. I wondered, what is the opportunity or requirement for ministerial students to do work in the community, say an internship or something to bolster their understanding of community and people in the world? Is that part of the coursework?
Yes. So each school kind of handles this differently, and I haven't been able to get a clear picture on how it is because I'm not on the academic side, to be fair. So I'm more out in the community myself. But I know that depending on your ministerial path, most folks have to do what they call clinical pastoral education. That usually happens in kind of a hospital setting. And that is usually anywhere from 4 months to a year in some cases. And then other programs also have to do an internship, usually with a congregation. So we have partnerships with a number of congregations where Starr King students get placed and do different, and each seminary handles that a little differently. Some folks do their internship after they graduate, and others do it as part of their academic program. And I don't want to say anything wrong because I'm not completely up to date on all that. But yes, there's definitely always a large chunk of practical experience that's required through the process. Let's pull up the chat here. Okay, what do you think are the biggest challenges for ministry and therefore ministers' education now? I think, and this is just from may just be from my limited perspective from where I am, is the student debt loads. So, and this actually kind of goes to, Bruce also asked about the cost to students. So tuition alone at Starr King is about $20,000 a year to go full time. So one academic year. So the whole program would be roughly $60,000 in tuition. And I will say Starr King is the lowest per credit hour versus kind of what we would consider our peer schools. So like Meadville, Harvard, the Pacific School of Religion, PSR. So that's just the tuition. That doesn't count books. That doesn't count housing. If you're moving to the Bay, it doesn't count travel if you're doing low residency and going back and forth for intensives. Now we do our best to mitigate this through as many scholarships as we're able to offer. And we also, again, we try to keep our tuition as low as possible. We do see it as a justice issue, but we are trying to keep the institution financially stable for the long run. And we're committed to trying to keep that credit hour as low as we possibly can. We also offer, we have a home hospitality program that is run by one of our board members, and they will often put students up for the weeks that they come out to California for intensive courses. And that's a really cool program. So they get to know a lot of UUs in the local area. And it saves them a lot of money instead of having to pay for a hotel or an Airbnb during those intensives. And, I just think that that's a lot to ask of folks. I mean, no one's going into ministry to make a bunch of money. And so getting those student debt loads down as much as possible, through fundraising for scholarships, through increasing denominational support for the schools, I think that's definitely one of the biggest priorities.
Okay, thank you. There is another question on chat. It's from Terry. She said that you had a slide showing the 3 programs, but you didn't talk about MA. Could you elaborate on it?
Thank you. I did completely kind of skip that. The MA program is kind of a joint program with the Graduate Theological Union right now. So I don't exactly know how that program is going to change as we move away from the GTU, but it's more of an academic degree. So you can get like an MA in kind of church history and, you know, some of these more academic sides of things. So that's what the MA is. It's a GTU joint program. And like I said, the future of those is a little uncertain after the next couple of years. But thank you. Other questions?
Someone said they had a question. If there are other questions, please speak up or write it in the chat.
Well, I will definitely, I'm going to find out if we're offering UU Polity this year with virtual GA again. And I'll send that along to Jennifer and Bruce, and they can, you know, I think that would be an amazing opportunity for anybody who's really wanting to learn about, you know, that conjunction of how we operate as a denomination today, and the history of how we have done that. That would be a really great way to kind of tiptoe your way into Starr King if you want a taste of it. Reverend Dr. Meg Richardson is fantastic and very dynamic. I've never met anybody who knows as much about Unitarian Universalism as Meg. So that's a great way to kind of to get your toe in if you're interested in taking a class.
Can you say more about what class is? Is it 1 hour, 2 hours?
Well, they meet, the UU Polity Intensive is, I think it's a 3-hour class. So it's a full regular college course length, but they meet in between times on the GA schedule. There's reading that you do before, there's reflection and writing that you do afterwards. And then there's discussions that take place around the other events at GA. And then of course you're required to attend some events at GA in order to bring to bear what you're studying on it. So yeah, I'll definitely talk with Meg about whether they're offering that again and what format it'll take. I'll send it along. Yeah.
Let me take this opportunity to tell everybody then that General Assembly was supposed to be in Milwaukee this year. We were going to host it live. And of course, now it's virtual. But we do have money for people to attend virtually. So we can pay your tuition or your registration of $200. And watch for materials in our e-announcements. We have, I think, 14 delegate slots this year, as we are considered a large church within Unitarian Universalism. So we get a fair number of delegate slots. And I've gone to many general assemblies, and they're fascinating for all the different workshops and lectures and worship services. So we encourage as many to go as you can. So watch for application information in the announcements coming up.
That's fantastic. Yeah, we're thinking of doing that for our church. We're much smaller. We probably only have about this many people every week on our Zoom, but we're thinking about supporting folks to participate in virtual GA this year. I just realized that I didn't fully answer this question about the cost to students versus the cost of delivering the education. So yeah, Starr King, our total budget, only about 37% of our total budget comes from tuition. So again, I said, our board has made a priority of trying to keep the tuition as low as possible. Well, less than 40% of our budget comes from tuition. So the rest of that has to be made up with denominational support, grants, and charitable fundraising. So it's definitely a challenge to get the school to the point of financial stability and to keep us there. So support from congregations and lay folks that understand the importance of theological education, and of course, sending us students. So I know Jennifer probably does a fantastic job of letting folks know their options if they are experiencing a call to ministry. But yeah, if you take a class, you're supporting Starr King. If you're making a monthly donation, we love that you're sharing the plate. Thank you so much for doing that. All of that really does help. And yeah, we hope that as things get more back to normal, as more and more folks get vaccinated, I know Rosemary would love to come to Milwaukee and preach, and we can have an in-person event and talk in person and answer even more of your questions. I know that that she looks forward to doing that one day.
Thank you for joining us this morning, Jessica. Thank you.
Thank you. And Rosemary is currently on sabbatical. I forgot to mention that. So she's been on sabbatical, well earned and much needed sabbatical. So she left on August 15th, and she'll be back in just a couple of weeks. So she'll probably be kind of drinking from the fire hose in terms of information and getting back up to speed. But pretty soon, I'm sure that she'll be so grateful to see the share the plate from this congregation. So we appreciate you so much.
Thank you, Jessica. Lorraine, do you want to say anything about next week's forum?
I can quickly say that on February 14th, next Sunday, our forum is Politics in Wisconsin, the 2021 edition. And that's with Jay Heck. He's executive director of Common Cause in Wisconsin. He's been a forum presenter several times, and it'll be good to have him let us know his current thinking on affairs of state government.
Great. Well, thank you all for attending. Thank you, Jessica. We'll see you all next week, we hope.
All right. Thank you so much, y'all. Stay warm up there.
We're trying.